Joe is a hunter himself, and he joins me now in the studio. So, Joe, you saw the story today. You saw that picture. When you saw Steve with some of those photos with that beautiful animal, what did you think?
You know, my first reaction as a hunter is I myself have posted pictures on my social media accounts. It's when you actually come to harvesting an animal, there's a lot of mixed emotions that come to it. Some people haven't always been the best at putting it in words how that emotion feels. You do have some remorse when you take an animal's life, but it brings you closer to that animal in the sense that I make sure I use every ounce of every animal I've ever harvested. I would never harvest an animal for a trophy. I would harvest an animal with intent of using that animal to the fullest. And I'm also doing so to contribute to conservation efforts for this animal. This animal was harvested because cougar population in that area can cause damage to the deer population and everything else. So this is all important for sustainable habitats and to maintain these populations. So,
and that's you. That's you posing with an animal you hunted, but you say there's a caption underneath there, right? And it says, none of this was wasted?
Yes, exactly. We spent from 8 in the morning until 3 p.m. that day, packing every ounce of that animal out of the bush. It was a huge endeavor. But like I said, when you harvest an animal, you make sure, as an ethical hunter, you make sure the animal is taken as painlessly as possible. You try and do it with one quick, clean kill. Every hunter is taught that when they're taking their course. And it's also taught that you use every ounce of that animal. It's not taken specifically for fun, specifically for a trophy. It's taken with the intent to use the animal and to contribute to those conservation efforts.
So what do you make? He said he made a stir fry with the cougar. Is that?
That right there, I think, speaks volumes to the fact that it wasn't specifically a trophy hunt.
Right.
If it was a trophy hunt, then the animal would have been left in the bush or someone else would be consuming the meat. He wouldn't have used that animal. So the fact that he's taking it home and he's providing for his family, there's no difference, in my opinion, from that. And it's actually, he's likely, you know, more going to use that animal. He's going to efficiently use that entire animal to feed his family with that than if someone who brings home beef from the corner store.
And that's what's interesting. You also said about how he is using this, or this is part of a conservation effort.
Correct.
And so explain that a little bit to me. By killing this cougar, what does that do?
Well, you see, I think Mitch put it really well in his tweet, is the fact that we're encroaching on their habitat. And as we encroach on their habitat, these animals' migratory paths, everything like that is being cut off. So these animals are being pushed into smaller and smaller confined areas. As that happens, these animals will either be faced with famine, plague, things like that if the populations go unchecked. So conservation efforts, by purchasing these tags for these animals and these permits, we're actually making sure that these animals stay in a sustainable population count. So we're actually preventing issues with these animals. If you look, right now there's a snow goose call going on because there's too many snow geese. They've gone unchecked. So what hunters are actually doing is they're conserving these animals, and these numbers aren't figured out just by drawing random numbers out of a hat. They're chosen by biologists who are studying these animals, and these biologists are funded by the tags that these hunters are purchased. It's not coming from taxpayers, it's not coming from other efforts, it's coming from the hunter's pocket, and we're contributing to these conservation efforts.
That is all very interesting information. I want to read just part of Lorraine Harper's tweet, not the compensating part, but the first part. And this is what she said. "What a creep, chasing a cougar with dogs until they are exhausted, then shooting a scared, cornered, and tired animal." What do you make of that, of her characterization of what she says this hunter did?
As someone in the media, you can appreciate the fact that any story can be spun in any direction when you use certain wording. Unfortunately, she chose wording that obviously made this gentleman look like a complete villain. But on the spin, I've never been on a cougar hunt. I've never used hounds to hunt. But if you think about it, this animal is extremely elusive, and this animal needs to be harvested because it's affecting the population of the local species, such as deer and elk. Now, if this animal needs to be harvested and it's extremely elusive, if you use the hounds and you can get closer to this animal, they ensured that they could take a much more ethical shot on this animal and likely ensured that it was taken much less painlessly than it could have been. So in that sense, I think it's extremely beneficial.
I was just told by my control room producer, Ingrid, you were telling me that there's some kind of response. What is it that we're about to play? Okay, there's a Wild TV television video response to all of this. Let's play that and listen.
Fishing television network, and we fully support the ethical and legal kill that Steve Ecklund has presented us. Unfortunately, he's getting some huge backlash, but that won't change the fact that we love our hunting heritage here in Canada, and Wild TV will continue to support that.
So this is what Steve Ecklund had to say. Can we put that back up on the screen? This is what Steve Ecklund had to say. Oh, okay, we're going to try and come back. There it is. I'd like to say thank you to all the outdoorsmen and women alike for their continued support. I am proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with such an outstanding community that support our hunting heritage. Okay, so there we go. So do you think what's going on, because, we showed you with deer, and I know you hunt duck, and deer are much more plentiful, duck are much more plentiful, and goose as well. Is that geese?
Goose, grouse, yeah.
So, there's something about this cougar. This cougar is a spectacular, a beautiful animal. Do you think that that's what's going on here in terms of some of the negative reaction, that they're not as plentiful? Maybe their habitat is being encroached upon, but they're not as plentiful as some of those other animals. And maybe you could argue they're just not this gorgeous, beautiful animal.
Right.
Is that what you think is causing some of the reaction?
They're definitely not as plentiful, but also keep in mind that when it comes to permits allowed, they're normally under 4% of the actual population of that species. So although most people will not see a cougar, chances are if you're not seeing a cougar, that's because it's not a problematic cougar. When you do see a cougar, it's too close to humanity. You're looking at risk of children, you're looking at the risk of dogs, things like that. So those populations need to be kept in check. So it's an elusive animal, again, which is why they use the hounds on the hunt. But I would say that the backlash is due to a lack of knowledge on the actual animal.
So you think that game hunting should continue in Canada, obviously?
I've been hunting since I was 4, and I think it would be a huge mistake for people to remove hunting. I think people should continue to hunt ethically. They should be continued to be governed. Courses are maintained, and you're taught how to hunt ethically, take a quick kill, appreciate your harvest, and moving forward, I think if we were to remove that, it would be a huge, huge mistake.
It was really interesting getting your insight today, Joe. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
Joe Eppele with me in the studio. He's hunted for most of his life. You're watching CBC News Network.